They're called the Trent photos. 2 shots of a flying saucer over McMinnville are some of the most debated pieces of Oregon history. Paul and Evelyn Trent took the pictures back in 1950.
And now their children have turned to on-your-side investigator Dan Tilken to get the negatives returned. He's going to join us now. They're in the hands of a local newspaper that just refuses to give them up. Dan, what's the deal?
Well, the Trent family and the McMinnville News-Register are forever intertwined on this. The paper first published the photos 58 years ago, inspiring wonder, inspiring ridicule. The Trent family has had no control over the use, and they still don't because the newspaper has other plans.
There's the original front page.
Photos snapped within moments, taken here in the backyard of the Trent farm in McMinnville. The local newspaper sold thousands of copies across the country. Linda Saylor and Tammy Gokenauer remember their parents' account of what happened.
Mom was feeding the rabbits, saw something, hollered at Paul, and Dad's instinct was to go get the camera.
And then the saucer was gone. Critics have long said what the Trents did in this very spot was pull off one of the most elaborate UFO hoaxes in history, that they took a pie plate or a hubcap and dangled it from power lines that run in front of the property. The Trents always maintained they saw something, but the ridicule took a toll on the family.
We're the alien family. That's all we were talked about was the alien family.
When Paul and Evelyn Trent died in the mid-90s, the location of the negatives was a mystery. Linda Saylor discovered they had been in the hands of Navy physicist and UFO investigator Dr. Bruce Maccabee since 1974.
I contacted the Trents myself and talked to Mrs. Trent extensively over the few years. She said it was okay if I borrowed the negatives. And I implied that I was only going to keep them for a few weeks while I looked at them. Well, it became apparent that they had really good stuff in them, and it took me more than 2 weeks. I actually had the negatives for like 25 years.
Maccabee agreed to return the negatives to the Trent children. Case closed, right? Well, Linda thought it would be safer if Maccabee sent the negatives to the McMinnville News-Register to pass on to her. That was 2001, and she's been trying ever since to get the newspaper to give them back. Hi, Mr. Bladine. This is Dan Tilken with KATU Television calling you back again. We wanted the newspaper to explain why it's keeping the negatives, but the publisher, Jeb Bladine, won't agree to an interview. So through these documents, we'll have to explain past arguments. His father, Phil, ran the paper when the photos were published. And this letter from 1970 shows Phil helped get the Trent's negatives on the flying saucer back from United Press International when they disappeared the first time. Phil Bladine is also the man who lent the negatives to Bruce Maccabee with the permission of Paul and Evelyn Trent 3 decades ago. The fact that Phil Bladine had them to lend is the crux of the newspaper's argument. In this letter to the family, Jeb Bladine writes, Paul Trent left the negatives in Phil Bladine's hands with the indication that he wanted nothing more to do with them. The letter states the paper believes that the negatives should become part of a permanent historic display in Yamhill County with a mediated settlement as to access and other rights. Even after Bruce Maccabee made it clear in this email he sent the negatives to Phil Bladine under the assumption that he would return the photos to the Trent children. Then he clearly instructs, you should return them.
Trent's children are clearly the rightful owners. Since Mr. and Mrs. Trent never signed any document giving the rights to anyone else.
We went to the newspaper in person, and we were told Jeb Bladine was in a meeting and he'd get back to us. Well, he did 6 days later in this email, writing, it's possible there will be legal proceedings related to the UFO photographs, and I am not willing to participate in media interviews on the subject. We maintain our belief that the negatives should become part of a permanent historic display in Yamhill County.
We're not going to take them and try and make millions off them. We just want to put them like in a safety deposit box and have them locked up to where we know where they're at.
It's just something that belongs with the family. It doesn't say Jeb Bladine photos. It doesn't say McMinnville Register photos. It says Paul Trent's photos.
There is a key piece to this puzzle we cannot fill in. Phil Bladeen suffered a stroke several years ago, and he passed away just this past spring, so we cannot ask him what he thinks about all of this.
Family, they've obviously pressed their case plenty, Dan. What about a lawsuit? They thought about that?
They have thought about that. They say they don't have the money for a lawsuit, and they frankly say they believe it's not right that they should have to fight for something that is clearly theirs. And, we were talking about this. These photos are fascinating, and folks at home want to see them for themselves. You go to KATU.com, and you click on the special report section, and you can see high-resolution copies of these photos. If we had the real negatives, then we could do something even better.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan.